Untamed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Platform.
Welcome to the iOS podcast. It's only sport. That's the name of the show. Martin, Devlin, Lachlan, War, 1 till 4 on the platform, Monday through Friday. And then we condense, what we think are the best bits into this podcast for you. The Ashes. Extraordinary. What a finish in Edgbaston. Doesn't get much better than that. And if you don't understand Test cricket, just jog on. It doesn't matter if you don't understand it. For those of us who get it, we love it. We carry on. George Bennett on the show today. One of our best ever professional cyclists. Crashed out of the Tour de Suisse, trying to get back on board for the Tour de France. He said he's got a bit of skin down. Do you know what that actually means? You're racing 70k downhill with a little bit of lycra between you and the asphalt. You fall off your bike. You got a bit of skin down. That means serious abrasions. Big long chat with him. And MG, Mark Geyer, as we look forward to Origin number 2. And will it be all over tonight for the New South Wales Blues? But as always, we begin the program, tablets in hand, I say gather my flock. It is time for another sermon. That means to the mountaintop.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
Uh-oh, here we go. So now the Qataris, via an official statement from the Qatar Football Association, say their guy, Yusuf Abdurrazak, didn't use discriminatory language against our guy, Michael Boxall. In fact, Yusuf, was the victim of racial slurs himself. Of course, this comes as no surprise at all. They were always going to counter-accuse, weren't they? The ref said he didn't hear it. We refused to play the second half, match abandoned, and now it rests with FIFA to sort it all out. Regardless of whether it did happen as our players said it did, regardless of whether New Zealand footballer Ryan Nelson or anyone else supports the actions of our players, regardless of whether you or me believe our guys and think their guys just throwing up a self-protective smokescreen, none of that matters. None of it. This is now what we call a he said, your word against mine, the reality of which no one is right. No one's wrong, no one's right. But there has to be a consequence for walking off the pitch, for refusing to play. And that is where I fear New Zealand football and the actions of the All Whites might now cost us plenty. And that's not fair, but neither is life. No, it's not right, but neither sometimes is life. It is what it is. I love that saying. It is what it is. Now we deal with however FIFA wish to deal with it. And given the recent history between FIFA and Qatar, and let's not forget that Qatar bought and paid for a whole goddamn World Cup, which country do you think that FIFA are going to side with? Here's how I reckon it rolls out from here. FIFA will say that they conducted an investigation which was inconclusive. It is never appropriate to take the law into your own hands. There's a due process that must be followed in future. No further action will be taken, and FIFA is fighting to rid racism from the game at all levels. Meaning they will sit on the fence and do nothing. So where does it leave New Zealand and, more importantly, our men's national team in terms of future international fixtures? Let's hope this doesn't blow back in our face. But that is the very real fear. Very real. Because Qatar have the deepest pockets, and they also just happen to have FIFA right down the bottom of one of theirs.
Devlin.
What do you want? We want information. Information. You won't get it.
The Platform.
Lachlan, sports news headlines.
Well, I was going to start off with Qatar now calling us a bunch of racists, but you pretty much covered it all there, so I don't really know if there's really much to discuss there.
Well, what there is to discuss is what the hell FIFA are going to do next, and the word that we are getting is we're going to get fined. Isn't that going to be great? So in the end, we might be completely in the right here, but in the end, we might have to write a check.
Yeah, well, it's not going to end well for us.
It's
Whatever
not gonna
happens,
end well.
it will not
It
end
won't
well
end
for
well
us,
for us,
and
no.
it'll either end a little bit better or a lot better for Qatar, because cha-ching, 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 money.
You know.
Qatar's governing body for football, the QFA, responded to the racism allegations lodged by the All Whites. They said that the players had an exchange of words in the heat of the moment. Yusuf Abdurrazak stressed that no racial or discriminatory language was used or directed towards the players of the New Zealand team. So that was their response to our allegations. But as I say, you covered that all off pretty well. So let me move on. Australia have pulled off a thrilling 2-wicket victory to claim the first Ashes cricket test, chasing down 281 and claiming victory in the final hour at Edgbaston. England had reduced Australia to 227 for 8 with 15 overs to play on the final day. Needing 54 for victory, it felt as though, okay, England getting a handful of wickets in a short space, well, in a certain period of time, it seemed very plausible they'd get 2 more to dismiss Australia. But no, in the end, Pat Cummins and Nathan Lyon combined for a 55-run 9th wicket stand, pulling off the most unlikely of wins. Cummins finished not out on 44, Nathan Lyon on 16. That followed Usman Khawaja setting up the chase for Australia with a patient 65 first innings century. Some good news for some White Ferns players. Leah Tahuhu has had her impressive 2022-23 season rewarded with a return to the White Ferns contract list. She was named in the 17-strong list this morning by New Zealand Cricket. Also making a return to the list is Northern District's wicket-keeper batter Bernadine Buzundenhout. I hope I pronounced that correct. Buzundenhout. After a 2-year absence as she recovered...
That's a famous South African name.
...from relative energy deficiency in sport.
That's a famous South African name. More famous rugby-wise than cricket, because that name was the ref of the 1976 series who absolutely ripped us off. And he was he famously said in a press conference after the last test where he denied us a penalty try to level the series, he said, well, you don't live here. My house could get burnt down and you don't live here. That's what he said afterwards. That was the referee.
Well, fair call then.
Yeah, fair call.
Give them every penalty.
That's what it was like back then, 76.
So good news both for Leah Tahuhu and Bernadine Buzundenhout, both getting White Ferns cricket contracts. Good stuff. The headquarters of the Paris 2024 Olympics Organising Committee and those of its infrastructure partner were searched by police as part of investigations into alleged embezzlement of public funds and favouritism. This from prosecutors. The National Financial Prosecutor's Office said that the Paris 2024 headquarters were raided amid a preliminary investigation launched in 2017 into contracts made by the Summer Games Organising Committee. Sport, money, hooliganism, there's all, the FIFA, IOC.
Didn't they do this with the Rugby World Cup ticketing not so long ago?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, with a whole lot of people involved in the France World Cup Organising Committee, whatever you want to call it.
Spell this out. So, people involved at the highest level of sports administration globally are ripping off their organisation.
Nah.
Sorry, I just tumbled off the chair backwards with surprise. Look, it shocked me, that is.
Yeah. You'd never think. Well, it's never happened before.
No.
There's no such thing as corruption in sport, is there?
Oh.
Anyway.
Well, not for the last 24 hours, anyway.
Rugby fans, speaking of fans being ripped off, or people being ripped off in sports, rugby fans desperate to attend the Super Rugby Pacific final will now have to wait for general public tickets after the Chiefs' website crashed during pre-sale. Oh. It's actually a bit of a shame, especially if you have the ability to get pre-sale tickets. It's a pain in the butt for people, but at the same time, it's a great story, and obviously people are dying to get those tickets. It's going to be a sellout. Yahoo. Oh, absolute sellout. The New Zealand Breakers have granted powerful Tom Vodonovic an early release from his contract. Vodonovic will take his talents to the Philippines. He'll be departing the Australian NBL. And just finally, here's some good news. New Zealand cyclist Neve Fisher-Black has claimed her first women's World Stage Tour victory, winning the 4th and final stage of the Tour de Suisse. She said, this was the perfect day. Winning is the very best feeling. Finally, I could throw my hands in the air myself. That's what's making news, madam.
Devlin.
Oh my goodness me!
The platform.
Origin number 2. Oh, have the Blues even got a chance tonight? Stalwart, Kangaroo, Penrith Championship winner and Blues legend MG joins us to convince me and all other Blues fans we got a chance. Oh man, we're going into this game, dude. I don't have any confidence. I wish I did. Fill me full of confidence and tell me that we're winning.
We're winning, Marty. We're winning. G'day, mate. Good to talk to you. I haven't spoken to you for a long time, and I've missed your voice, mate. So let me. You sit back in your chair there with your headphones on. Let me reassure you that New South Wales will win tonight. Okay, Brad Fittler, since 2018, since he's been coach, has never lost the second game of the series. So that's one tick. Rex Robson, who's making his debut tonight, has that little bit of a mongrel look about him that I like, and I think that he'll start tonight. I think he'll start with Damien Cook coming off the bench. You don't bag it. Number 2, that's tick number 2. Number 3, you don't bag a champion. James Tedesco has been given it from pillar to post from every quarter, even from New South Wales, media and stuff. He will be man of the match tonight in a winning game. And I'll bring it back to Sydney for game 3, and we'll see one of the best games you'll ever see. But as for tonight, they're cocky, man. The Queenslanders are cocky, and that's not usually like them. They're sprouting about. Reece Walsh is thumbing his nose at everyone. He's telling us to shush. And Ben Hunt's got contract drama on his hands with Dragons. Mate, they are worried. They are the favourites tonight for the first time since 2016, and you can bet my house on the fact that New South Wales will win.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, why the hell? I mean, look, this is a Queensland side. The Queensland that's playing at home, and they won with 12 men with 12 minutes to go in the first game. So just break it down with me tactically wise. What are the Blues going to do tonight that's going to be different?
For a start, they can't play any worse than they did in that last 10 minutes of the first game. They can't play any worse. They in the excuse of language, they shit themselves. They should have played a nice, relaxing game of they've got 12 men. We're in front by 10 points. What are we doing? Let's just grind out a win here. And they didn't, unfortunately for them. But Mitchell Moses is an interesting selection because Mitchell Moses, I think, when he made his debut in 2021, I don't think he knows he wasn't ready for it. They're having that little bit of a sample, I think, as well as some prelim games and a grand final last year. His big game status has kind of gone through the roof somewhat, and I think that'll hold him in good stead tonight. I don't put it this way, Marty. I don't think any of the New South Welshmen will be overawed by the situation. I'm glad they kept Hudson Young in the team because I think he's an Origin player. I think he's one of them guys who could be a 15 to 20 Origin player type guy. And as I said before, Tom Trebojevic, again, he couldn't have played probably a more quieter game than he did in game 1. So the tactics are, Marty, last game against Queensland, I was at Adelaide Oval, and it was quite visible that Queensland were playing the ball probably a second faster than New South Wales. So that tells me that New South Wales weren't getting off their line. They were playing the game on their heels. Queensland were playing their game on their toes, and that's how you win footy games. So that's the major adjustment that I think Freddie and the camp would have made to game 2. The kicking game of Mitchell Moses is going to be integral tonight because he has probably, in my opinion, the best kicking game in the competition. And when you've got the likes of the back line that he's got, Stephen Crichton can leap, Tommy Trebojevic can leap. Brian Tottle and the Fox aren't that tall as far as wingers go, but they get the job done if the ball goes high. So you're going to see a really good tactical kicking game tonight from Mitchell Moses on the back of some really good go forward from Payne Haas, who I hope plays a lot more minutes than he did in game 1.
Man on man, is the Queensland team better, or were they just a better team in game 1?
No, they were a better team. And a better team always beats better players.
Okay.
It's a team sport, and you've got to play as a team. We didn't play as a team in the last 10 minutes. We threw all the toys out of the cot and went, well, let's panic. They've got 12 men. Cameron Munsey's got the ball. Like, come on, boys. It's you're paying them too much respect. That's when you've got a bloke in the sin bin, it's time to put the foot on the throat and say, well, you're not taking this game from us. And they would have learnt that. Freddie's got a lot more at stake in this game than he's probably ever had as a coach before. And there's only two ways you can go when your back's against the wall. You can fight or you can flight. And I can guarantee you tonight, at about 10:30, if I'm speaking to you tonight after the game, there's no doubt in my mind that we'd be talking about how good the New South Welshmen fought. They fought for what was theirs. They fought for the embarrassment of game 1. And now we're going to Homebush for game 3. It's probably the biggest game in Origin history.
If Brad Fittler, if it doesn't happen tonight, what is his future as Blues coach?
Well, I always look at it this way, Marty. Is there someone better than him to take the spot? Is there someone better than Freddie to take the role? And at the moment, I can't think of a name that pops straight into my mind. So I know his contract was if they didn't win this series, his extension wouldn't triggered, but I don't know about that. I don't know. Look, I haven't spoken to Freddie while this camp has been on. I'm as you know, I'm really close to both him and my brother-in-law Brandy is in camp as well. And the last thing I've spoken to them about is rugby league. So I can guarantee that Freddie would love to keep the job. because he's our most capped player of all time. He's our youngest player to put on a blue jersey. He spreads the word beautifully throughout his Hogs for Homeless, where he goes on his rides with his fellow Harley Davidson riders. If I think of New South Wales, I think of Brad Fittler. So it'd be very eerie to see him not involved somewhere in the concept. He's very, very strong in pathways. He loves seeing kids coming through, and most of these blokes in this team, Reece Robson's, the Payne Haas's, and you've got Callum Matungi, who's in the 18th man. They've all come through the pathways, and that's where Freddie excels. So even if they do happen to lose tonight, which I don't think they will, Freddie won't be lost to the New South Wales, alumni. He'll be around in some way, shape, or form, and I'm glad of that because he's a much loved character as far as New South Wales Rugby League goes.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. Origin number 2. I am the Minister of Common Sense.
Next!
That means I get to decide, and only I get to decide. We're talking Origin.
We need to talk. We need to talk. What have I done now?
3 quick questions for you before we go to ARU. That is Andy Raymond Unfiltered, our regular Wednesday correspondent out of the Oz. We'll talk Ashes, of course. We'll talk Origin. We'll talk Eels being in the 8, and we'll talk the All Whites. And what the hell happens next, not only for our national team, but also our national administration. Who wins Origin tonight?
Queensland.
No. Who wins Origin tonight?
Queensland.
Queensland.
Oh, sorry.
Next!
Who is or are the key players tonight? Who does most to help their team win?
I'd lean towards Reece Walsh in some capacity because he had a pretty quiet game 1. He was
He
steady.
had a quiet game on attack. He was bloody good on defence. He never made any
wasn't bad on
mistakes.
defence. He was pretty steady. I think Xavier Coates, because I'm just trying to think, he'll be on the same wing as he'll be defending top. Oh, I'm pretty sure. So he'll have the height advantage. So I could see Cherry Evans and what's his name? He's the other half, Cam Munster. Daly Cherry Evans and Cam Munster going to Xavier Coates in the year. Actually, regardless of who he's got on next, because he's got Josh Adokar or Brian Toto. One of them will be D'ing him up. He'll have a massive height advantage. And I thought it would be David Fifita, because he's also one of these guys who can you either commit literally 3 or 4 defenders to him to bring him down, or you give him a little bit more room and then you just bust through the line. So he's one of these guys that can actually break a game open just like that. I think New South Wales will be a little bit more polished, but I can't see them getting any
Comes down to
real
a couple of
result.
guys for me. It comes down to Payne Haas and it comes down to Junior Polo. Those guys have got to be making yards, and they've got to be making yards all game. No fanning around. I don't want to see you seagulling in the back line. I just want to see you up the guts making yards.
Yeah, but the problem is that they were toothless in attack in game 1.
That's game 1, mate. This is game 2 I'm talking about. Which is
so your spine needs to pick it up more so than your front rows, I think, of New South Wales.
Third question, who will be the most disappointing player tonight? And I will tell you right now.
Don't say Luai.
There's going to be 2 of them. One of them is Luai and the other is Moses, okay? I think Moses is going to bottle it, and Luai has not shown, even though MG says here he's shown it for Penrith, he has not shown me anything in terms of Origin. He's got to play well in this game. This is your chance. You can become a Blues legend tonight, Jerome.
I look at the full pack and I think Tyson Frizzell's pass is best and Hudson Young's not bad, but I don't know if they actually have the star quality that Queensland do in their second row. And I'd agree with more Moses than Luai. Not to be anti-Mitch Moses, I just don't think he's the half you want on an occasion like this. That's just me. I've never been a big fan of his. I don't think New South Wales are going to win this game with him as their halfback.
He's one of the toughest New Zealand athletes there is. And he does one of the most brutal sports on the planet. George Bennett, regrowing some skin and getting back on the bike for the Tour de France. How's the health first and foremost?
Yeah, pretty good. Considering better than I thought it would be at this point. So it's obviously had a pretty nasty crash last week, and the first signs weren't great. And obviously was out of Swiss after a couple of days of trying to get through. And but I've done all the scans and everything, and I think it's not as bad as it looks. It's just a lot of muscle damage, but no actual separations or anything like that. So I'm sort of able to get back on the bike, and obviously pretty uncomfortable and things like that. But yeah, we're pushing forward at this stage.
Okay, so I just want to spell this out for everyone exactly. So, you're talking about muscle separation. I mean, you guys are hard bastards. We all know that, okay? And so what you talk about when you get injured, you accept a lot of pain and you accept this as consequence of what you do. When you came off your bike, talk us through it. When you came off your bike, what speed you were going, what you felt, or, what flashed through your mind. Give us that.
Well, we're going pretty quick. Probably going about close to 70k an hour, and it was just a big fight for an important part of the race, and it wasn't a particularly hard area. It was, and we started going downhill a little bit, and a couple of guys, I don't think people realize how it's sort of quite a lot of contact, and sort of guys were just pushing on a bit too hard for space in front of me, and just touched up wheels and went down, and I just collected them and landed on the pavement, and then of course everyone's riding pretty close, so they all pile on top of you. So yeah, it's it's definitely part of the sport, but look, honestly, mate, with what happened a couple of days after my crash, I'm not going to stand here and complain about crashing, and I just feel really lucky I was able to walk away from it and essentially no real damage.
You're talking about Gino Mäder, of course, and that, I don't know what words to use to describe it to you, mate. I know that, when you're competing on tour with these guys, you bump wheels, you go hell for leather, but obviously you're all comrades at the same time, and so I wish I could say something to you that would mean something about this. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, thanks. For me, it's also, it's like for everybody, obviously we're competitors, but we've raced together for a long time, and he was super nice guy, Gino, and it's obviously been hard for everyone in the peloton, but I can't even imagine how hard it must be for his close friends, for his teammates, for his family, and pretty strange feeling when you, like you say, we're fighting each other. It's all, doing everything you can to get an inch on the other guy, and then there is an element that we accept of risk that like you say, when we crash, we do know it's part of the job. A crash a fair bit, not always as bad as a crash last week, but there is an element of going, okay, yeah, that's part of it, and we know there's risk, but I don't accept that dying in the sport is a risk, or it's not a risk that not a risk I'm prepared to take, or not that should be. It's not something that should, an outcome that should exist in the sport. And there's definitely, elements of things we can change. But I'm also, I'm not going to point fingers here and say this is because of this or this organizer or this course or this or that. I think it's something that's changing in the sport, but at the moment, I think the main thing is we just sort of, take time to sort of think about Gino and think about, support his friends and family and teammates and stuff. And, I bumped into just out training yesterday, bumped into a teammate of his, that's a close friend of his. And, I think everyone's just in shock really. And we're still sort of grappling with the idea that, guys just died in a bike race.
Yeah. It's such a heavy risk and reward business. At the same time, no one, goes to work thinking that I'm not coming home at night. And let's talk about it in those terms, because that's what you're doing. You are going to work. At the same time, man, can you ever allow yourself to think that, hey, I'm racing 70 Ks, as you said before. I got, there's a ravine there. On that side of the road, it's a big cliff. A lot of us, we've driven around roads, and maybe we've cycled around them, but we haven't raced around them. And it's the same as in motorsport, isn't it, mate? If you allow that to come into your mind, it's going to alter the way that you approach your race and perform and things. And so, it's just you must prepare knowing it, but at the same time, do you kind of just divorce it out? It's just like it's an unreal experience.
Yeah, it is a very strange thought to just think like, okay, we'll pin a number on and get back at it. Like, there's never going to be a good time to do that again. There's never going to be a good time that's going to feel right and say, okay, enough time's passed, let's go, elbows out, So yep. I think you are right. Like, when fear comes into the equation, you don't perform. And it happens to me a lot, like depending on how I've crashed. I mean, if I've crashed myself in a corner, it does take a long time to get that confidence back. And then when you start thinking about the possibility of crashing, you brake. If you over brake and you lose the wheel, I mean, you're just not in the race. So there is some kind of mental gymnastics that you have to perform to get yourself to stay on the wheel or to take those risks. And I think some of us will be ready to do that before others. And I think there'll be no one out there that does it without thinking about, what's happened. And it's actually been far too many in the last sort of 10 years, especially. I mean, all through cycling history, it's actually, but we're traveling faster than ever. The technology's changed, the stakes are higher, everything's just coming up, and it is becoming a, I don't think there's anyone that's not thinking about it and trying to at least force the thought out of their mind while racing. But it almost feels, okay, I'm not going to say disrespectful, but it almost feels quite callous to just go like, right, put it out of your head and keep going,
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full.
The Tight Five.
A bit of skin down and it grows back. I can feel you wincing. Both me and Lachlan are as well. We spoke to George earlier, just jacking up the interview, and said, please don't send us any photos, mate, okay? Because an abrasion for him is not a little sore blah for us and put a sticking plaster on it, okay? It normally requires a skin graft. Let us talk about serious sporting topics and give a minute or so on each before we move to the next one. Super Rugby figures. Sky TV and New Zealand Rugby are just pumping this. They're loving it and rubbing it. The fact that, hey, we got a percentage increase here, and we got a percentile increase there, and we got percentages and percentiles over here. But they won't tell us the actual viewing figures for their products. Why is that? Aussie win the first Ashes test. Did you honestly believe that they were going to do it right throughout that fifth day, Lachlan? Who wins Origin tonight? Qatar say that we racially abuse them. So, he said. Who do you believe? Are they necessarily wrong because our guys have to be absolutely right? And Fury says Wilder, I quote, gave me the toughest night of my career, unquote. Kick it off with the Super Rugby figures. And good on New Zealand Rugby and Sky TV. Pat yourselves on the back. Go on, put out all the PR, fluff and guff. As the mainstream media lap it up. Why does somebody not ask a question here? Stop telling us the percentage increase in people that are now watching off their iPads and tell us the actual viewing figures. How many thousands or tens of thousands of people are watching Super Rugby? How many were watching Super Rugby Opiki? Give us the Super Rugby figures today compared to last year, compared to 5 years ago, compared to 1996 when it first started. Now, the reason that they won't do this is they say, oh, it's commercially sensitive. Commercially sensitive to who? If you tell me, Sky Sport and New Zealand Rugby, that you have 50,000 people watching a game on Friday night and the Warriors get double that, I'm not cancelling my Sky Sport subscription after hearing that. I'm not all of a sudden hating on rugby because of that. Why won't you tell us the actual figures? Working in this business, I can give you that answer straight away. The reason is because they're embarrassing, because they are low. Because when you do get told them, you're going to guffaw with laughter. The only commercial sensitivity is the fact if you're ripping off your advertisers and telling them that there's a hell of a lot more people watching than are actually watching. We have worked in an industry, myself and Lachlan. I've worked in it for over 3 decades, Lachlan for the best part of a decade, where radio ratings come out 4 times a year. And it's just a comedy show as you watch content program directors run around all day trying to find a percentile that they can hang success on. Yeah. Oh, look. One-legged lesbians who live in Stokes Valley, and they're 55% of them listen to The Breeze. What you're telling us is that you have no audience, right? You actually have no actual cum figure audience. Is that why they're not telling us? New Zealand Rugby and Sky Sport?
Yeah. I saw 2 figures on Twitter the other day which were actually retweeted by someone at News Hub. And it was Streaming viewership is up. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember the second one. It escapes me.
Skybox was up, I think.
Yes, that's right. Something to do with the Skybox. And then there was Mark Robinson saying, "Oh no, look, we're doing well."
Yeah, it was Andrew Gordy tweeted it out. As
Andrew
a matter
Gordy,
of fact.
yep.
I
So
would have expected more from him on the investigation side of it, but hey, maybe he didn't have time.
Yeah, for starters, streaming numbers might be up because streaming hasn't been around that long for you guys, Sky. And in terms of the Sky Box, well, what does that mean? What does Sky show us? The average number of viewers. Give us the 8 game ones, but give us the TV ones for the average number of viewers per weekend and then per season, and just compare it with every single year.
How many are watching the Premier League? How many watch the NFL when it's on?
Exactly, and then compare them with those in New Zealand who are watching the Premier League, the NFL, the NBA, cricket in general, the NRL. Compare it with all of that.
Just give us those figures.
Where does Super Rugby sit, and I think we all know that it has fallen down.
Yes.
It was once one tour in that top echelon, and now it's
and here's the topic you're not allowed to talk about. How many were watching Super Rugby O-Picky?
Oh, dear.
Okay, because, I know that over 1 million people watched the Black Ferns win the World Cup final. Hey, but that was the rebirth of the women's rugby, the uptake of women's rugby, the growth sport in New Zealand, an explosion of interest. Well, you must be very proud then of the tens of thousands of people that were tuning in to watch those games. Why won't you tell us? The other thing I want to know is how many people are watching the lame-ass programs you put on Sky? How many were watching the women's sport program, for example? How many people are? You spend a lot of money on these programs. Why don't you tell us? We are your shareholders.
I don't see that program advertised on Sky anymore.
It came and it went. Ashes, Aussie win.
I forgot women's sports seasonal, isn't it?
Is this a good thing for the series that Australia won, or would it have been better for England to have won? Or does it really matter? Because England are going to go out there in the second test like they have won.
I don't think it matters too much because it's a completely different England team to the one that Australia just killed a year and a half ago. I guess it would have been kind of cool to see England win based on the fact that they did lose that series. They lost 4 and drew 1, didn't they?
Yeah.
But they didn't win one. They drew the last one.
4-0.
Yeah, so it was 4-0. Yeah. I don't think it matters. I actually think the fact that Australia won, given how as the day went on with all the weather delays early on, and then you got past lunch and past tea, and there was a bit where they just stalled a bit, Australia, and it was like they needed 70-something runs and they just couldn't quite get over that mark. I think Joe Root came into bowl and then Pat Cummins just started hitting boundaries, and then it was like at that moment you're like, oh, they only need 2 wickets here, England, and it felt like that. No, the Poms would end up winning. But no, I think when your tail can put together a pretty handy partnership like that, there's almost like a...
It was almost 90 runs, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I think the partnership was 50-55 thing, but it felt like more. But it's almost like if 2 unlikely guys step up, you kind of want to see them go on and win it. And I mean, we don't like the Australian cricket team. I think Nathan Lyon more so than Pat Cummins, but Nathan Lyon very much so. They're 2 of the more likeable Australian cricketers. By comparison to the rest.
Nathan Lyon. I don't mind Nathan Lyon.
I think Nathan Lyon's
What do
fine.
they call him?
Oh, they call him the GOAT, don't
Gary.
they?
No, they call him Gary, don't they?
Yeah, they also call him the GOAT.
Who wins tonight? England. Oh, you've got a cold now. You're blowing your nose. Is that something to do with the fact that you're actually having an ice shower every morning? Is it?
No,
really? So you're in a nice warm shower, then you just dramatically change your body temperature, and now you've picked up a cold as well.
No, I caught the cold on the weekend.
How did you catch the cold on the weekend?
My flatmate's got a cold.
Really?
Yes.
So you were tonguing flatmate?
Well, no.
I'm just asking a question. A simple question.
He maybe knocks on doors. No,
please. His name's Andrew, by the way. Anyway, he's a good dude. So he's got a girlfriend. Her name's Rowena. So stop it.
Oh, right. Okay. He's also got a fractured ankle and he got a cold at the same time. So poor guy. But no, I've got a cold from the flat. That's why I've got a headache, and that's why I won't go away because I've coupled that with some intense gym sessions. Anyway,
who wins Origin?
Queensland. Queensland. Yes.
How big an upset would it be if New South Wales win this?
I don't think it would be huge because they do have a better team on paper. Well, they have better individual players, if you will. But I just think Queensland are a much better coached team. They're far more settled. There's fewer question marks. They're bringing in pretty much the same team from game one to this one.
And they don't do a lot differently every time they play. Don't care, even year to year. Queensland play like Queensland, okay?
I'm trying to remember the last time they had a game 2 at Suncorp.
Well, New South Wales have never won one of these, have they?
I don't think so.
Unless, of course,
as much as New South Wales have won the last 5 or 6 game 2s. I don't think any of those have been at Suncorp. I'm trying to remember.
I live in hope, mate. That's all I do. I just live on hope. And hope.
Why do you care so much?
Because I just bloody do, mate. Because I just do. And
I love Origin.
I
want Queensland to win. But if they lose, I'm not too worried.
Text coming, Martin. Who is your Australian team before you jumped on the Auckland Warriors? As you know, as an EPL fan, you can't have two teams. What made you change from one team to the Auckland team?
Great question.
Okay, Text. I mean, I've told this boring story before. I used to be a Balmain fan.
I thought it was Western Suburbs.
I was a Balmain fan, okay.
Are you sure it wasn't Western
Until
Suburbs?
we combined with them, and I don't like them, and I never liked them. In actual fact, I loathe them. And that was, I was Balmain. This was Gary Jack, this was Wiz, this was the Buttocks, this was a big block of Roach, all of those guys, Benny Elias. And then when we merged with West, that was it. I don't want to be West. I'm a Balmain Tiger. So at that stage, I patched over the Warriors. I gave it up and I said no.
So your love for Balmain was nowhere near as strong as your hatred for Western Suburbs.
That's it.
Now, what if Manchester United and Man City merged? What would happen?
I'd love that today, right now.
Right.
I think that's brilliant. Now we're the European Cup holders and the treble winners.
Manchester United and Liverpool in some alternate universe.
Never bloody happen,
What if they, in an alternate universe, what
Never
if they
happen,
merged? What would you do? Would you support them or not? No, you wouldn't, because you hate the Scouse.
I hate it. There's no way. I would.
Yeah.
That's it. They
become
would
a City fan.
They would be dead to me from
You'd
that
be a
moment.
City fan.
Qatar say that we racially abused them. Now it comes down to FIFA. What are FIFA going to do here? I can tell you what they are going to do. That they're going to say that he said this, you said that. They're also going to say you should never have stayed in the dressing room, that your obligation is to play that game. And so, you didn't follow the protocols. You should never have taken the law into your own hands because they can feed. The worst thing that's happened now is because Qatar have come out and said this, which of course they were always going to, is that FIFA can take the moral high ground. And you'd never want to leave FIFA in a position where they pretend that they have the moral high ground. And that means that they can actually legitimately and lawfully and everything else say, well, you broke the rules and therefore we must punish you to stop other teams doing this. And that means they will fine New Zealand football. And I hope like hell it doesn't affect our chances to play matches in the international windows. But Lachlan, I'm talking worst case scenario here. And again, please believe me, I'm not saying that, our guys shouldn't have reacted. But in hindsight, and hindsight of course is always in hindsight, but in hindsight now, when it comes down to, hey, we want a match in the international window, well, every other country in the world has got every right now to say, well, are you going to turn up? Are you going to play? Are you going to stay and play? They've opened a can of worms here that I just feel that this is now much bigger than perhaps even the incident was. And I'm not saying that those guys shouldn't have reacted, but I'm just wondering, I suggested it before, whether the CEO, Andrew Pragnell, needed to be more pragmatic about the decision he made, which is rather than just say to those guys, okay, stop the match, actually have said, play the match and let's deal with this.
There should have been a realisation from Pragnell that, okay, as we can sit here and say what the right thing to do is from a ethical perspective with someone racially abusing one of our players, but at the same time, looking at all factors, what's the least damaging decision? The least damaging decision is to keep playing the game. Because if you don't play the game, then you get yourselves in trouble with FIFA.
Now, we're not excusing anything that was said here.
No.
But the fact of the matter is also is that the Qataris have now said, they've said that they were racially abused. So, okay, we are 100% right and they are 100% liars. Is that it?
I think this is actually not a bad comparison. So my old man used to be a police officer.
Yes.
And one thing he said was the most important thing to being a cop was having a cool head, because you could be trying to arrest someone and they could be just smacking you and putting elbows in your face and you've got to be calm and whatnot, and then cuff them. They could be saying all these nasty things, making comments about your family, yourself, your workmates and whatnot. And you've got to keep a cool head, because if you don't and you decide to throw an elbow yourself or hit them over the head, then you get yourself in trouble. Sure, they're still going to get punished, but you've done something wrong here and you've done something in the heat of the moment that is now means that you're going to be punished by your bosses and whatnot. And I feel like it's the same thing here. Justice will be served if they've done something wrong. You've got to have faith in that, and you can bang your drums and whatnot and kick and scream after the match as much that something needs to be done here, and you can just keep squawking and chirping until something is done if you're Andrew Pragnell in New Zealand football and do the right thing. But in the lead up, you've got to understand that if we take this course of action by abandoning this match and pissing off our employers more or less, indirectly employers being FIFA, then that actually could be very detrimental to us as a footballing body down the line. So you've got to understand the consequences of your actions. And Andrew Pragnell probably just I don't mean to be rude when I say this, when they're thought, oh, well, we could be social justice warriors and stand up for what we think is right for
Yeah, and I also think there's a bit of star effing going on as well.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest, I think he's overwhelmed by the fact that these players, he's probably a little bit, idolises them and so forth. He's never been in sports administration before. He's had jobs at Sport New Zealand.
Well,
so
he's never played the sport.
Never played high-level sport before
as I
either.
say, as you said before, we're not excusing any sort of, racial abuse behaviour in any matter whatsoever. But being the devil's advocate, you've got to look at it and make a reasoned decision about what's going to be the least damaging for yourselves, your governing body, your team, whatnot.
And the last thing you want to do is leave FIFA in a position where they get to decide, because
and also
they're pretty cosy with Qatar, as we know.
Exactly, I was about to say.
Yeah.
Qatar have a lot of sway here.
Yeah, well,
You've got none.
quite a lot of sway. Qatar bought a World Cup, remember. Qatar had no football stadiums, no players, no team. They bought a World Cup. So they're probably a little bit closer to those in FIFA who make the decisions than we are.
Devlin,
That is a disgusting act.
the platform.
Test cricket. Look, it does not get any better than what we saw overnight. The Ashes going right down to the final balls, day 5 at Edgbaston. Scott, my man, it's midnight. It's midnight where you are, dude. You haven't stopped, have you, since that final ball went to the fence and you won the test?
No, I don't think we'll be stopping for a while either. This is a famous win for Australia, and look, I would argue probably their best win in at least a couple of decades, if not more. There were any number of times where that match looked like it was going to slip away. It was a classic game that I don't think either team really had the ascendancy at any point in the test match until probably when there were 1 or 2 required to win, and whatever it was, 3 required to win when Cummins hit that boundary, and even then it still felt like there might be another sting in the tail. So just an incredible match and an incredible finish today.
Look, it is really such a roller coaster, so many twists and turns, and even with 54 runs to go, there's only a couple of wickets left. They've got the new ball at that stage where you're thinking, oh no, it's finally turned again in England's favour.
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of counting down to those new ball overs, thinking that if England could get the new ball with, say, 40 or 50 required to win, that it probably would be their match. And then obviously they decide not to take the new ball. Joe Root keeps bowling. Alex Carey is caught and bowled by him. I think in the 81st over, so the over where they decided not to take it. And then they held off for a little while on taking it because Joe Root was bowling well. And there had been some concern through this match that the new ball actually didn't swing that much. It was when it got a little bit older that it offered a bit more. It obviously didn't come bat as quick either. So they held back on it. So and then by that point, Australia got a bit of momentum. And, the field starts to panic a little bit. They kept the field out, which I thought was a strange move. For a team that's been ultra aggressive through the match, they went with the same plan that they did in the first innings, which was to bump the Australian tail. But in keeping the field out, they kind of released the pressure a bit and made it a bit easier. So they probably didn't get the effect they would have liked out of having the new ball or at the 80 over mark, where I think we all thought they would take it.
I mean, what do you learn from a test match like that? And what I'm asking you there is what do we know about who's actually the better team, or don't we know?
Well, that's the beauty of it. I just think we're set for an all-time series because England walk away today and they are so confident that what they're doing is the right way to go. I think Ben Stokes made the comment in the press conference that was, if you compare how England went today, this test match to previous tests against Australia, most recently, of course, 2021-22 out in Australia and, their struggles in Australia in 17-18, and even in 2019, yes, England drew that series 2-2, but realistically it was a series dominated by Australia. Bennett Stokes put off a miracle at Headingley, and Australia sort of dropped the ball at the oval. But anyway, my point is that he was saying that they took it to Australia, they went toe to toe, and either side won that match. So England walk away probably more confident that their approach to cricket is the right one, and the way they can beat Australia is by playing the way they did in that Test match. Australia walk away thinking, well, we've managed to hold off, the force that is England cricket over the past 12 months. And therefore Australia, again, they walk away thinking that their approach is the right one. So obviously, not every test is going to be a carbon copy of each other, but both sides will probably take those same tactics into the next couple of tests at least.
That's our podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen to the entire show, 1 till 4, Monday to Friday, download the Platform app, and via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to whatever shows over however many weeks at your leisure, at your listening pleasure. Platform Plus. First thing to do, though, is download the Platform app.
Devlin.
Unbelievable. Incredible.
The Platform.